Okay, we're going. I guess we're recording.
Okay.
So, today we're going to be talking about Nightbreed, and I suppose you could introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Troutface. I'll
Troutface.
go with Troutface for this episode.
Okay. So, for those who aren't in the know, Nightbreed is a dark fantasy horror film released in 1990, directed by Clive Barker. The film is based on Barker's 1988 novel Cabal, or Cable as I've pronounced it in the past, and it revolves around a group of monstrous creatures known as the Nightbreed. So, what are your first thoughts about it?
I listened to Cabal on Audible
Yeah,
a few years ago, and this is a situation where I prefer the movie to the book. Not that I dislike the book.
yeah,
I think the strength that the movie has is that questions that might pop up aren't really that distracting. I just feel like I'm going along for the ride. Whereas I'll have questions about the world in the book or not really understand how the rules work, and that
yeah,
distracts me. So I like that there's a story unfolding and I can ignore my questions more easily.
yeah. The story follows a character named Aaron Boone, played by Craig Schaefer, a troubled young man who is haunted by dreams of a hidden world inhabited by bizarre and monstrous creatures. Convinced that he's a serial killer, Boone seeks the help of a psychiatrist named Dr. Decker, played by David Cronenberg, who manipulates him into thinking he's responsible for a series of gruesome murders. Boone eventually discovers the existence of Midian, an underground city where the Nightbreed reside, and he becomes embroiled in a conflict between humans and the Nightbreed. So, what were your thoughts on, those story elements?
There's there's themes of intolerance. So
Yeah,
um the Nightbreed is forced into seclusion because humans compulsively kill them.
yeah.
Um, it doesn't really go into detail on that. It seems like it's almost a natural law that humans will um,
Fear them
attack as
because we don't
groups.
understand them.
Yeah, it's kind of like the X-Men
Yeah,
in a lot
that's
of ways.
kind of what I was thinking too, because, well, in addition to that, they also have superpowers because they're monsters or whatever.
Yeah, and I like the way that the movie portrays it. This is a hint, but there's kind of a culture. The drawings on the wall, the way things look inside their um, abode really
Yeah,
creates a sense of like culture, and I could see going there as having a cultural shock, but it works really well for the movie because it lets the viewer suspend their disbelief and get a little deeper into the story, a little more invested.
that's true. And the Nightbreed are a diverse group of creatures with unique appearances and abilities and personalities as well. They have distinct characteristics, and they're portrayed as sympathetic beings who, well, I mean, for the most part, there are a couple of them who are more villainous, but they mostly long for acceptance and understanding despite being feared and persecuted by humanity. And, as Boone uncovers his true nature as one of the Nightbreed, he becomes entangled in a battle for survival against the humans who hunt them and also who hunt himself. So, what's your thought or what's your thinking on, Boone entering this battle?
Oh, so this is a common, not to get too academic, but this is kind of a common exposition device where
Yeah,
a character that's an outsider becomes an insider, and this allows the audience to go from being outsiders to insiders with him.
that's
So
true.
I think it's very well done.
Yeah,
That it's done, and it's done in an artistic style, and it's I think it has a lot of relatable qualities. I think a lot of people at some point in their life feel some kind of identity crisis, and they turn to someone they view as an expert, which might be like a
yeah,
parent or teacher. In this case, it's a psychiatrist, to help them understand their identity crisis. And So I like that it's so relatable, even though it's also quite bizarre.
And Nightbreed explores themes of otherness, identity, and the duality of human nature. And it has elements of horror, fantasy, and supernatural things that are really typical to the Clive Barker universe. That's sort of his fashion, his approach. And I would say the film incorporates Barker's signature and dark atmospheric style with grotesque creature designs and visually stunning set pieces. So, what are your thoughts on those designs and the scenery?
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the movie with Howie Mandel and Fred Savage, Little Monsters,
Yeah, I
which
still
came out.
haven't seen that.
Oh,
Oddly
okay,
enough.
that came out, I think, 1 or 2 years before Nightbreed. But
Yeah,
it's kind of like there's monsters that live in this um, like underground abode. My favorite scene in the movie is when Anne Bobby, who plays Laurie Winston, when Laurie's going in, when she goes to look for Boone in the cemetery crypt, um, she's walking around and there's all these different odd things going on with the Nightbreed. They're living their lives, and you kind of see them in like just their natural behaviors.
yeah. She
Um,
encounters that dying critter in the
yeah,
sunlight, and she basically rescues it, and that's partly how she gets into the area known as Midian, is that she actually immediately has a sort of heroic trait that they respect.
yeah. They even she asked the elder something like, "I just saved this child's life. Don't I get something?" And
Yeah,
the elder said something to the effect of, "The child's not alive, but what she has is yours if you want it. That is the law." And I like Laurie's response. She's like, "No, I don't want that." She just really wants to find Aaron Boone. So I kind of like that there's that cultural miscommunication because it makes it more real. It adds
yeah.
a very nice verisimilitude to the scene.
Well, there's also this aspect where the Nightbreed have sort of a traditional way of their own, and that it doesn't always necessarily make sense, and that Boone is immediately clashing with that because he's sort of the new arrival.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you see like everyone's first reaction to him, there's the moon faced. I don't know. Look, it reminds me of the McDonald's late night tonight commercials where they had these moon faced critters
Yeah,
driving cars. This would have been early 90s. The moon faced guy captures him, and then there's this other Nightbreed person that wants to eat him. And they talk about how it's breaking the law, but they might not, they might break the law anyway to make an exception. So their response, that community's response to Boone, changes so much in the movie because he basically becomes like a savior figure at the end.
yeah. Even that one guy, I don't remember his name, but he's the one who first bites Boone and
Yeah,
sort of marks him. But he
yeah,
even comes around toward the end and he's like, okay, you're the one. Basically, he's like the Neo character, I guess.
yeah. The Neo character or the RoboCop or the
Yeah,
returning Superman or Spock or one of the Christ-like figures of cinema
yeah. So
reborn.
upon its initial release, Nightbreed received mixed reviews and achieved only moderate success at the box office. However, it has since gained a cult following, and it's often regarded as an underrated gem among horror enthusiasts. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think it's underrated?
I do. One thing I'd also like to point out is there's a role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons made by a company called Palladium that made a game known as Nightbane, which is basically the same premise as Nightbreed, where you
Oh,
play these superpowered monsters that are shunned by society.
hmm.
Um,
Boy, I never heard of that one.
oh yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's a real well-known company. Not a lot of people It's certainly not as popular as Dungeons and Dragons, but it's very similar.
Yeah. So it's almost like a mockbuster. Only
Yeah.
this movie wasn't necessarily like a blockbuster. I don't think it did terribly at them. It might have even made a profit, but I think it was only a little bit successful.
Yeah.
So when you watched this just today, did you see the heavily edited studio version or the director's cut, also known as the Cabal cut?
This would have been the heavily edited studio version.
Okay.
I just watched it on the most convenient streaming service.
Tubi.
Came through Freevee.
Oh, that's where I saw it too.
Yeah.
But the original is different from the Cabal cut, which was released in 2014, and that supposedly restored much of Barker's original vision. So, you mentioned the other ways in which Nightbreed has been influential, but have you any experience with the other media forms? Like apparently there's been some comic books and novels, and they all further explored the mythology and characters introduced in this story.
I haven't. Just familiar with Nightbane, which seems like an inspired offshoot with a whole different set of rules. And the premise of that story is there's this Nightbane creatures don't die, and there's this mysterious moment, I think, where it stays night for 24 hours. And this mysterious moment makes a lot of people become Nightbane spontaneously.
Well, oddly enough, when you mention that, that also reminds me of the X-Men, the very first movie, because part of that story is that I think wasn't Magneto trying to sort of change everyone into a mutant or something like that?
Yeah, with Cerebro, and then Senator Kelly becomes that like blob pustule thing that he kind of just dissolves.
Yeah. So it would have ended up being a destruction of humanity, basically.
Yeah, which I think Magneto would have been okay with.
Yeah. So in this storyline, you know, Boone is tested in many different ways, and there's a sense that he is different from most humans, and his curiosity about the other side becomes increasingly difficult to control. So do you think there's like a taboo element to the story, like because he wants to explore a suppressed world and stuff like that?
Yeah, I could see that. Like I've worked with a lot of people that in therapy that when they feel angry, like any even small signs of anger can create an overreaction from people around them, like in their family, if anger is a really taboo thing to have. That so people become kind of phobic of their own anger.
Yeah.
And then there'll become a point where in therapy they really dive into it. And it seems like I see a parallel process with Boone kind of really diving into this otherness or not really being a part of the culture he thought he was a part of.
Yeah. I do also like the premise of being under the care of an evil doctor, or let's just say a specialist in unconventional treatments. So oddly enough, we didn't talk about Decker much yet. So what are your thoughts about him?
I really do like David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
He seems like a pretty fly guy. I thought his performance was good, where it was creepy and intimidating, but there were also moments where he seemed really like someone you could open up to, where he had like a gentleness about him.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, again, I think the duality of the character, which is what a lot of this movie is about. And
Yeah.
I do have to mention that his mask is creepy as hell.
Yeah, I do like the mask. It's such a simple design, but it works really well.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you know, I think the actors do a pretty good job in this movie. And even in moments where it's over the top, it just kind of fits anyway.
Yeah, there's this moment with Dr. Decker where he's in I think it's a gas station,
Yeah,
and he ties up the gas station attendant and starts interrogating him about the location of the Nightbreed.
yeah,
And he asks the attendant, why do you know so much about them? And the attendant says, because I wanted to be with them, or I wanted
yeah,
to be one of them. And then the attendant asks, why do you hate them so much? Did they kick you out? And I thought that was an interesting question
yeah.
because because Decker might not feel like he can really survive in either world, and so he wants to destroy the one he can't be a part of.
Maybe, yeah. Well, he also has this sort of rant against exterminating breeders or like killing families off or whatever.
Yeah,
So I think he just hates life. But
yeah,
he like maybe he became a doctor to sort of justify and rationalize it, wearing a professional sort of mask.
yeah. Because the world definitely reacts to you very differently if you're a doctor.
Yeah. And he obviously has his own ways of manipulating people and turning them against each other.
Yeah, he does use some classic narcissistic abusive techniques like gaslighting, trying to get people
Yeah.
to doubt their own perceptions, or he does do the double bind where um, the options that he presents you with are both wrong or both going to lead to punishment or whatever he wants.
Oh yeah, and he also gave Boone some drugs that rendered him apparently senseless, and he wanders in front of a truck and nearly gets hit and dies. There's
Yeah,
that too.
yeah,
That would be a rather unfortunate thing to have your doctor uh, do to you.
yeah, like a chemically induced gaslighting to make you think
Yeah,
that you're more sick than you really are, some kind of insidious, like Munchausen's.
yeah. There's also a hint of a monster falling in love sort of story here, a bit like The Fly, perhaps, because there's the monstrous element of Boone that's developing inside of him, but he's still in love with the character of Lori. So I'm wondering what are your thoughts on that? Did it remind you of like The Fly or anything like that?
Yeah, I could see that. Romance with a monster. There's some elements from The Fly. There's also something with like Boone's monstrous hidden identity is
Yeah,
also the part that makes him special and the savior. So maybe there's something with like I don't know if this is an overt message, but something with trusting yourself or being okay with being weird, like being
yeah.
okay with going against the grain, because that will let you connect to your highest potential as opposed to trying to be a conformist.
And in a pretty literal sense, that's
Yeah.
how he knows he has this power because he sort of embraces the dream in order to control it, and he seeks out his own reality, which is obviously represented by Midian.
Yeah.
And the monsters have these weird powers, and it reminds me a bit of the X-Men, as we mentioned earlier. So there's like I do wonder how that works, because are they shifting the molecules of the environment, even if only for a few moments, so they can become smoke or something like that? Like there's that one character who
Oh,
can
yeah.
basically become smoke.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. There's another rule that I didn't really understand because so some people are clearly born in the Nightbreed. What was it
Yeah.
about Boone that let him transform as an adult into the Nightbreed? Was he like put up for adoption or
I don't
something
know.
like that? Like how
I
does
don't
he have
know.
these powers suddenly and spontaneously? But I don't think
It
that
might be.
question's important in the movie either.
And it might be just that he was of a certain mind that he would naturally fit in or something like that. I'm not sure. To me, it almost seems like he's sort of a blending of the human world and the monster world or something.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, the Netflix show Castlevania. I don't know if you've seen that, but the character value card is both vampire and human. So I think
Oh,
that's another sort of trope to
yeah,
use
like
that.
Blade.
Yeah, where a character becomes more interesting if they're sort of a blend of two different worlds. And I
Yeah.
suppose that's true of, like regular life too. Don't people stand out more if they're not just of a singular identity, like if they're multicultural in some way or something like that?
Yeah. I think people that are too engrossed in like whatever area they're from, sometimes there's like a homogenizing effect. So all the people that are rallying to attack the cemetery um, seem like they've just kind of always been in that area. And
Well,
so,
that they're also rednecks,
yeah,
like a lot of redneck types, and obviously a lot of the villains are like in the law enforcement aspect of it.
yeah. And this might be my own projection, but I can't help but to wonder that they think that killing the Nightbreed will somehow protect their freedom, but the Nightbreed have existed there for a long time and didn't really threaten their freedom to begin with.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels there, aren't there? Like,
Yeah,
and you have to wonder what kind of, I guess, conspiracy theory kind of things such townspeople would have about the Nightbreed.
yeah.
Well, I guess, is there anything else you have to offer up on this?
Yeah, I suppose it's worth mentioning that, like, or I guess reiterating something you'd said earlier about some of the Nightbreed are villainous. Um,
Yeah,
so maybe that makes the Nightbreed, that gives the Nightbreed something in common with humanity, that there are some that are villainous and some that want to be left alone.
'tis true.
Yeah, and
'Tis
some that
true.
want to just lash out.
Yeah, I think that part of you know, the story is about just making us recognize that even though, foreign people and foreign ideas might seem scary, once we become sort of familiar with them, we start to realize that we're not necessarily different that much after all. And of
Yeah,
course, that's another message that you can find in the X-Men as well. Going back to that.
yeah, yeah. Because there are moments where Senator Kelly is more reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we have discussed this thoroughly enough. So I think we're going to hop right into the next episode and talk about the other topic.
Okay.
So I hope you're strapped in and ready to go,
Yeah, I'm
buckled
ready.
up. All
Do you
right,
need
so I'm going
to?
to stop this recording and we're going to
Okay.
start recording the next one.
Okay.